Now this is what I call a good-looking room. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Welcome to all. I am Marlene, Vice President of Public Programs for Skirball Cultural Center. Welcome to you all. Just sharing with the group that we're going to begin in a few minutes so you can begin to settle as we prepare to journey into past, present, and future. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Welcome. My name is Jessie Kornberg, and I'm the president and CEO of the Skirball Cultural Center. We're so thrilled to be with you. It truly, I am so full of joy and gratitude to be with you in this space for this conversation. Is anybody here for the first time? Yeah. Welcome. The Skirball Cultural Center was opened 29 years ago. The vision of a Holocaust survivor named Dr. Uri Herscher and his two partners in this work, Jack Skirball, for whom this site is named, and the architect Moshe Safdie. And together they imagined something that did not exist before. Uri said he wanted one good place for everyone. Safdie said he was building his belonging building. And every day we work to get a little bit closer to that dream, designing and building and opening the structure was not the completion of the dream. But you being in this room today, you should know, it's my belief, that you have moved us measurably closer to the dream, that we could actually be one good place for everyone, and that this could be a place where everyone belongs. And that is because over 29 years of beautiful programs and exhibitions and conversations, the experiences, the histories, the art, the treasure of Persian Jewish life in Iran and in America has not been front and center at the Skirball. And so it's possible that there could be so many people who are here for the first time. And so being here with you today to talk about how to share more of this history, more of this beauty, more of the strength of these people, we get a little closer to this dream. I'm so looking forward to the conversation that is to come to share more of what we have planned. Today is something that we imagined might be possible, but we would not have known how to do it well, except for a conversation with the Nazarian family, spearheaded by Sharon Nazarian. Yes. It's important that you know this is their vision too. And today is this coming together of many good people's dreams for what might be. This is not possible without partnership. And so it's important for me that you know we are doing this because this is something we always wanted to do. But we're doing it well because we're doing it in partnership with the Nazarian family, with our steering committee members, with the Jewish Community Foundation of Los Angeles, and now today with each and every one of you. And we are just getting started. Before I go further, one little moment of housekeeping. I know that there are people who you will wish were here, who couldn't make it today. This is being recorded, and we will share with you notes of our conversation, resources to get involved in the future, and the recording of the conversation after today's program. But in the meantime, we have one rule about photographs at the Skirball, and that is that you share them. Before I get any further into what we plan to do, we have to recognize where we are today. And that is in a moment of historic uncertainty. And there are people in this room, and there will be people on stage whose loved ones are in harm's way. I just want to say, if you are nervous, if you are scared, if you are concerned, this place was built not to solve those problems, but to give you a moment of respite and to say to you, however you're feeling today, it's okay. It's not okay what's happening in the world, but it's okay to feel however you feel. And so I just want to acknowledge there might be a diversity of feeling about this moment in the world, this war, our politics, how to make it better, how to find peace, how to get to peaceful coexistence. I don't know. I just want to say, each and every one of you, however you are feeling about this moment in the world, I'm so glad that we are sharing this moment together. And actually, the more diverse our feelings are, the more powerful it is that we share something together and that we find that common vision for a future that celebrates this community, this history, these values, these traditions, and what you bring with you into our future together. With that, I want to talk about what we hope the future will hold. And then I want to get into our program. This began as a conversation about what is possible in a museum. So the Skirball Cultural Center includes the Skirball Museum. For folks who don't know, this is the oldest and largest collection of Jewish artifact in America. It's 150 years old, and the first Jewish museum in America was the museum of this collection. It was originally in Cincinnati, Ohio, and it moved here to Los Angeles about 40 years ago. It is not the mission of the Skirball Cultural Center just to collect and preserve objects. Our mission is to welcome and to use objects to tell stories and to bring people together, to understand what makes them different, and then to discover what they have in common. That is what the Skirball Museum is dedicated to doing, to being one of the tools in that larger mission. And so when we began a conversation about what are the future stories we would like to tell in the museum, and what are the future stories our collection could bring to life, it was obvious to us that there was a gap, that Persian Jews were such an incredibly important part of the Jewish American story, and we didn't have the objects to tell that story. And so the project began as a desire to research from a scholarly perspective, what are the best objects to bring to life the story of Persian Jews in America? Thanks to the Nazarian Family Foundation, we were able to hire our first research fellow dedicated to this topic, and you will meet her this afternoon, the incredible Sophie Levy. Sophie has been engaged in deep research into objects in our own collection that we had failed to identify as part of an Iranian diaspora or a Persian Jewish American story. And she has actually identified, described, and researched dozens of these objects already in our collection. And now she has also begun the work of reaching out into community, other collections, private and institutional, and into families to identify those other objects that will help us tell this story. So then how? Well, we're figuring out the what and then the how. Our goal is to open our first exhibition dedicated to Persian Jewish art and culture in 2029. It's an auspicious date, the 50th anniversary of the migration of Persian Jews to Los Angeles. It is also an auspicious date for all Jewish Americans. It is the 375th anniversary of the migration of the first group of refugee Jews from Brazil to the colonies. And we will that year be thinking about the meaning, the importance, the legacy, and the history of both of those migrations, and what it says about who Los Angeles and America is today. I am so excited for that exhibition, but I'm more excited to commit as an institution to an ongoing conversation. Our goal is not to have one exhibition and then close that exhibition and move on to a different community or a different topic. Our goal is to create at the Skirball a place where any member of Persian Jewish Los Angeles, but more importantly, any member of Los Angeles could come and see examples of the beauty and strength of Persian Jewish culture on any day. In just one moment, I'm going to ask Sharon Nazarian to join me here, but I want to say just a last piece, which is why. Why is that the real goal? Of course, I told you before, our mission is to be inclusive, to have this place tell all the Jewish American stories. So part of it is just living up to our own identity. But there is another reason. On days like today that feel hard, when the news is scary and the future is uncertain, we have the most to learn from those people who bring with them the stories of survival, the stories of what kept them whole and human and together despite continuous onslaught of hardship and violence. We are going to have more moments in the future that call for this learning. And the failure to share the extraordinary resilience of Persian Jews, it steals from our future the wisdom that we need. We need this wisdom and this history and this heritage more than ever. I am so grateful that you have come here today to help us try to accomplish that and to share this history more broadly. And I must say, I feel so optimistic and hopeful that we will be able to do that well because of you. Thank you so much, and please join me in welcoming Sharon Nazarian.
We said we would need a community, and here you all are. This is so beautiful, and I can tell you, my heart is so full. And thank you, Jesse, for those absolutely beautiful words and for welcoming us so beautifully. We are living through momentous times. Today, for many of us, our adopted country, the United States, stands in partnership with our spiritual homeland, Israel, confronting a tyrannical regime that has oppressed the people of Iran for nearly half a century. That regime has ruled a country that many of us still call the land of our birth, our homeland where we were forced to leave due to intolerance and prejudice. History in many ways has brought us to this moment. In just 3 short years, as you heard from Jesse, in 2029, the Iranian Jewish community will commemorate 50 years of life here in Los Angeles. Half a century since so many of our families arrived on these shores seeking opportunity, safety, and freedom. In those 50 years, something remarkable has happened. Many of us are raising our second generation and some third generation of Iranian American families. We have built businesses, established institutions, contributed to civic life, and woven ourselves into the vibrant fabric of this extraordinary city, Los Angeles. Los Angeles has become our home, and we have become part of Los Angeles. It is these powerful realities that bring us together today here at the Skirball Cultural Center. On this auspicious International Women's Day, just days after the joyous Jewish celebration of Purim, where we play a key role, and only 2 weeks before the Persian New Year of Nowruz. And yet, despite all we have built over the past half century, a profound realization has emerged. An essential piece of our story has remained missing: the preservation and public telling of our 2,700-year history. After 50 years of life in America, our layered, complex, and hyphenated identities as Persian Jews and Iranian Americans are still not reflected on the walls of museums or the halls of cultural centers in this country, or anywhere in the world. For millennia, Jews have lived in Persia. We contributed to its commerce, its scholarship, its poetry, its music. We built communities, traditions, and families that endured across centuries of change. Those traditions carried us through empires and revolutions, through triumph and exile. They carried us here. Yet today, our grandchildren are growing up with limited access to that extraordinary inheritance. There's no museum we can walk into with our children and say, look, this is where we came from. These are the objects our families used. These are the traditions that sustained us. There has been no place where the story of Persian Jewish civilization could live, breathe, and be shared with the world. Until now. Today, that missing piece of the puzzle has finally been found, and the institution that has stepped forward with vision, courage, and commitment to tell this story authentically, responsibly, and with scholarly rigor is the Skirball Cultural Center. Thank you. The launch of the Persian Jewish Cultural Heritage Initiative that brings us together today marks the beginning of an extraordinary journey, a partnership between the Skirball and our community, a commitment to expand the Skirball's permanent collection to include objects reflecting the Jewish Iranian heritage, a commitment to celebrate our culture through music, art, food, scholarship, and storytelling, and a commitment to work towards something truly historic, a first of its kind exhibition dedicated to the Jews of Iran opening in 2029 to coincide with the 50th anniversary of our community's life here in Los Angeles. It really takes 3 years to plan, everyone. This is why we're giving it 3 years. The Skirball was founded on the values of preserving Jewish heritage while engaging with ideas and challenges of contemporary world. And now, through this initiative, our traditions, our memories, and our living culture will also be preserved within these walls. For the Nazarian family, it has been a profound honor to help build a bridge between this remarkable institution and our community. This work began a year ago through scholarship and research, including the Nazarian Research Fellow you just heard about, currently held by our very own Sophie Levy, who you will hear from after me. That research is already helping lay the intellectual foundation for what will come. Advisory committee members have been formed across every aspect of this effort, from object acquisition and preservation to programming, marketing, and development. But the truth is, the success of this initiative will depend on all of us. We have only 3 short years to help the Skirball create this historic exhibition. 3 years to gather the objects that tell our story, that document our traditions, and that ensure that the legacy of Persian Jewry is preserved not just in memory, but in history. And this will not end in 2029. As you heard from Jesse, the Skirball has committed that Persian Jewish culture will continue to be integrated into the programming and exhibitions at the Skirball for the years to come. And this cannot be done alone. They will need our voices, they'll need our ideas, and they need our treasures. So I encourage each of you, if you haven't signed up on the Skirball programming emails, please do so. If you know a brilliant spoken word poet, a master santur player, or a classical Persian vocalist, let the Skirball know. If there are family heirlooms in your homes that tell the story of our people, perhaps the time has come to give them either a temporary or permanent safe home where they can be preserved and shared with the world. Perhaps if you want to keep the ownership of your heirloom, know that you don't have to give it up. There are mechanisms for you to own your items, but put it on display, make sure they're preserved, and yet you keep your ownership of your item. So we know that by 2029, we will be here. We don't know what the future holds for the people of Iran and for the country of Iran. But our Iranian Jewish community will remain vibrant, creative, deeply rooted here in the beautiful city of Los Angeles. And as we look ahead, we pray that the United States and Israel continue to stand against oppression, that the brave men and women who serve in uniform return home safely, that the people of Iran will one day soon be given the opportunity to choose their own destiny in freedom and democracy. Most of all, we hope that our children and grandchildren will look back to today, March 8th, 2026, and remember it as a turning point. The day our community came together and said, our story matters, our heritage matters, and it must be preserved. So on behalf of my mom, Soraya Nazarian, my sister, Shulamit Nazarian, the whole Nazarian clan, we want to extend our deepest gratitude to the members of the advisory committee for your wisdom and your guidance, to Jesse Kornberg and the dedicated Skirball staff. Thank you for truly seeing our community and for committing to preserve our heritage for generations to come. Today, we begin a beautiful journey together. We plant a seed of memory so that generations from now, our children will walk in its shade. Thank you.
All right, hello everybody. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you. I just want to make sure the projection's all set, but in the meantime, I want to thank Jesse and Sharon for your incredible, just beautiful and eloquent remarks. Thank you. I feel really grateful to be working under both of your leadership. Thank you so much. All right, so. Yeah, it's wonderful to see you all. Thank you again for being here. خیلی متشکرم که شما همه تشریف آوردین و برای من باعث افتخاره که امروز با ما هستید. Thank you. So I want to start properly by thanking the Nazarian Family Foundation for their generosity and for their vision in supporting this initiative. I want to thank the host committee for this event, for their incredible contributions, and I sincerely mean it. I'm just humbled to play even a small part in something so needed and so timely, and I'm grateful every day to work with excellent mentors and colleagues at the Skirball. I went to elementary school at Stephen Wise down the street, or up the street. I visited Noah's Ark as a kid. My prom was here, so working at the Skirball feels like a homecoming. So As mentioned earlier, I joined as the Nazarian Research Fellow in Persian Jewish Art, Culture, and History in October 2024. And at the risk of repetition, my work focuses on researching the museum's existing Persian Jewish holdings, tracking other objects and stories out in the world, and starting to develop concepts for a future exhibition focused on Persian Jews at the Skirball, slated for 2029. As of now, the museum's permanent collection holds over 30,000 objects. 45 of those objects were created or used by Persian Jews, be that in Iran, Israel, or the US. Most of the Persian Jewish objects in the collection are ketubot, or marriage contracts, from the 1800s and the 1900s, but the others include textiles, ceramics, clothing, and more. But today we'll be taking a look at just a few of the most exciting examples. So let's begin with a ketubah from Yazd. Ketubot are marriage contracts intended first and foremost to protect the bride, serving as a record of the groom's obligations to her. This one records the marriage of Moshe, the son of Daniel, and Rivka, the daughter of Yosef Chaim, on December 16th, 1857. The main text is written in Aramaic, the language of Jewish legal documents. It starts at the top with a common wish for the couple's happiness, which you find on a lot of ketubot, especially from the Middle East and North Africa. Then it records the date and the location of the wedding, as usual, the bride's dowry, and an additional sum pledged by the groom, which is called a tosefet. The bottom section of the ketubah, which includes a property settlement and witness signatures, is in Judeo-Persian, or Persian written in its own variation of Hebrew script. Different dialects of Judeo-Persian varied across cities, and they were the everyday and literary languages of Jews across Persia until Farsi became more dominant in the 19th and 20th century. For centuries, Yazd was a center of both rabbinic scholarship and silk production, which was noted even by Marco Polo in the 1200s. In 1857, Jews in Yazd still had a livelihood in the silk industry, but most were living in abject poverty. Since the Safavid dynasty made Twelver Shi'ism the official religion of Persia in 1501, Jews across the empire became subject to waves of discrimination rooted in the concept of najasat, or ritual impurity, which held that non-Muslims were spiritually unclean. On these grounds, mullahs, or clerics, in many cities restricted where Jews could earn a living, how high their homes could be, what they could wear in public, and often much more. These conditions reached Yazd relatively later in the 1700s, but in 1857 they still shaped the lives of the city's Jews and its prominent Zoroastrian community too. The 1850s were a volatile time. Persia had suffered territorial losses in wars with Britain and Russia, and in 1852 there was a failed Baha'i assassination attempt on the infamous Nasiruddin Shah. In the years ahead, the Shah came under intense pressure from European Jewish organizations to intervene on behalf of Persian Jews, most notably pressure from the Alliance Israélite Universelle, which was a Paris-based network that opened French-language Jewish schools across the Middle East and North Africa. In response, the Shah eventually did issue some decrees, but power was decentralized, and in more remote or conservative cities like Yazd, they were enforced inconsistently, if at all. So discrimination against Yazdi Jews would actually worsen before it improved. Some had already begun emigrating to Ottoman Palestine since the early 1800s, and by the time the conditions eased, many more had already left for Tehran and Jerusalem. Ketubot from Yazd are known for their playful and fantastical colors, but as you can see, this one actually has a more restrained and realistic palette. There is still something very visually striking about it, though. The inclusion of the Shir Khorshid, or the lion and sun, an emblem with roots in ancient Zoroastrian astrology that had been a national symbol of it had been commonly used as a national symbol of Persia since Safavid times. It's found much more often in ketubot from Esfahan, but its style is a bit different here. Its presence tells us that whether they were conscious of it or not, the people who made and loved this ketubah understood themselves as Persian. It wouldn't be accurate necessarily to read this as an indication of nationalism in a modern sense, but the fact that the Shir Khorshid appears in an important document of Jewish private life tells us that these people saw themselves as a natural and intrinsic part of the cultural world around them and even found beauty in it, even when their belonging in that world was challenged. Now for something a bit different. This is a silver Persian Jewish amulet from the late 1800s to early 1900s, worn by a woman for mystical protection during pregnancy or childbirth. It would have originally been one of a pair that would have been tied to the woman's upper arms. More Jewish metal amulets from this period survived from Iran than anywhere else, telling us how common their use was. Some were made of brass, but silver was usually the material of choice. It was widely available through trade networks and had an association with purity. Widespread infant and maternal mortality were harsh realities at the time, and people turned to ritual and mysticism for hope. For centuries, Persian Jewish mysticism was rooted in older Jewish texts and shaped by exchanges with Sufism or Islamic mysticism and Kabbalah, which the Jewish mystical movement it began in medieval Spain, but it reached Persia relatively late. Still, by the 1800s, it had made its way into everyday life, which we can see here, because in the center of this amulet is a Kabbalistic inscription. It's a 42-letter name of God that's derived from the prayer Ana B'Koach. And it's hard to see, but upside down, it also says the name Michal Bat Rachel, which was likely the name of the woman who wore it. One figure who appears frequently in Persian Jewish amulets is Lilith, a child-stealing demon who originates in Babylonian mythology and was later recast in Jewish legend as the first wife of Adam, banished from the Garden of Eden for refusing to submit to him. According to one medieval Jewish text, Lilith struck a bargain with 3 angels. She would spare any baby who was protected by an amulet bearing the names of the 3 angels, Sanvai, Sanvai, Samangalof, which appear on the side panels of this amulet. If you want to see this amulet up close, it's not too big, but if you want to see it, it's currently on view in the Life Cycle Gallery of the Skirball's core exhibition, Visions and Values. To introduce the next set of objects, we actually need to turn to the story of a matriarch of a local family. Monavvar Hazan was born in Hamadan in 1901. Hamadan is home to one of the oldest Jewish communities in Iran and the famous shrine of Esther and Mordecai. Unlike most Persian cities, it had no mahalleh or concentrated Jewish neighborhood. Jews in Hamadan lived dispersed among Muslims and were generally wealthier than those elsewhere. Monavvar's father did well as a fur trader in the Russian trade sphere that dominated northern Persia at the time. But in the 1890s, Hamadani Jews entered a period of brutal persecution when local clerics intensified restrictions on them and pushed forced conversions to Islam. Many Jews in Hamadan chose to convert voluntarily to the Baha'i faith or to Christianity, seeing this as a potential escape that still allowed them to retain ties with their Jewish roots. But Monavvar's birth in 1901 coincided with a turning point. An Alliance school was established in Hamadan in 1900, opening up more economic possibilities gradually and pushing against the authority of the local mullahs. A few years later came the Persian Constitutional Revolution, which established the Majlis, the parliament, and granted religious minorities a representative, although it was just one representative. As Monavvar grew into a teenager, her hometown became a wellspring of early Jewish organizational life, producing the first Zionist organization, the first Judeo-Persian newspaper, and the first association of Jewish women in the country. This environment might help explain why she was literate in both Farsi and French at a time when female literacy was rare. Still, as was the case for most girls at the time, she became a bride very young. At the age of 14, Monavvar married Eliyahu Hazan, 20 years her senior. She gave birth to 2 daughters before being widowed at the age of 45, eventually leaving Iran during the revolution in 1979. She spent her final years here in Los Angeles, where she passed away in 1984, leaving behind 14 grandchildren and many more descendants. Her great-granddaughter, Avid, remembers her as a tiny woman who was always present and always caring despite everything she had lived through. We're very honored and very grateful that these objects, all of which belong to Monavvar Khanum, who were recently gifted to the skirball by her granddaughter, Khanum Nader Raouf Hariri, her great-granddaughter, Avid Hariri Shushani, and the extended Hazan family. Working with them, and I really mean this, has been an honor and a privilege, and we're grateful that objects this meaningful have found a home where they can be shared and cared for as much as they deserve. So in the center, we see Monavar's wedding ensemble, a satin jacket and skirt with silver thread embroidery in the Qajar style, like Naqd Duzi. On either side are items from her dowry, a terme, a handmade textile she likely would have sat on during a bridal bath ceremony, a kohl flask, like an eyeliner flask or sormedun with two little birds kissing on top, and a container for sefidab, which was a cosmetic paste that was thought to brighten the skin. These objects actually may well have been made by Jewish artisans in Hamadan, where metalworking and textiles were part of the community's livelihood, in part because stigmas around impurity often barred Jews from trades involving food or other organic goods. In 1915, the year of Monavar's wedding, Persia was caught in the crosshairs of World War I, even though it was officially neutral. The north, including Hamadan, was occupied by crumbling imperial Russia. The south, with its newly discovered oil fields, was occupied by Britain, and Ottoman forces pushed in from the west. The Qajar dynasty, in power since 1789, was in its twilight years, collapsing under the weight of a century of wars, foreign interference, and internal misrule. One of the Russian organized militias fighting in Persia during these turbulent years was called the Persian Cossack Brigade, and among its mid-ranking officers was a young man named Reza Khan. By 1921, he had become the brigade's commander, seizing control of Tehran in a British-facilitated coup. By 1925, he had deposed the last Qajar king, founded the Pahlavi dynasty, and declared himself Shah. This brings us to the final object, also graciously donated by the Hariri and Hazan families, which I'm really excited about. This is a lace panel handmade by Monavar Hazan in 1931, which her family hung in a sukkah each year and sometimes used as a room divider. It's already incredible for a handmade piece like this to survive for a century, but when we look closely at what she included in the lace, it becomes a really fascinating snapshot of a moment in modern Persian Jewish history. When Monavar made this piece, Persia, soon to be officially renamed Iran, was 6 years into Pahlavi rule. Reza Shah was working to build a unified, modernized, fiercely nationalist country, secular and shorn of foreign influence. He lifted discriminatory measures that had loomed over Jewish life and began to actually enforce minority rights laws. Coupled with the spread of Western-run Jewish schools across Tehran, a generation of Persian Jews started to come of age more mobile, more educated, and more integrated than ever before. Many Jews celebrated Reza Shah, but as members of a historically marginalized group trying to navigate their own political and ideological currents, they didn't always fit neatly into his new nationalism. He considered Zionism, which was still relatively in its early days in Iran, a form of outside loyalty, banning it in 1926 and even executing Shemuel Haim, a Zionist journalist and member of parliament, on conspiracy charges in 1931, the same year when this was made. The stigmas that Persian Jews faced never disappeared completely, and it would still take decades before most of them were able to emerge from poverty or prosper financially. But this was the beginning of a new chapter that would transform the ways Persian Jews moved through the world, understood themselves, and imagined their future. All of this is present in Monavar's Sukkah panel. At the top, she starts with Reza Shah's, with the Pahlavi imperial insignia, including the Shir Khorshid in the middle. Below that, there's a scene of two lovers surrounded by birds, flowers, and other plants and animals in a miniature Persian miniature landscape. Next, there is a soldier, and also surrounded by flowers. And on either side of him, we see two stars of David with the word Siyun or Zion written inside them. While Persian room divider textiles tend to use heavier materials like velvet or wool, Monavar's choice of lace likely reflects the French cultural influence of her time. What also makes this panel extraordinary is that it was made by a woman living within a domestic sphere who had every conventional reason not to be aware of the political conversations of her time, but she clearly was, and they clearly moved her, leading her commemorate all of this for to commemorate all of this for herself and for her family. To conclude, if there's one thing we can take away from these objects, it's that even items from the most intimate areas of everyday life carry history. They show us that the way Persian Jews have understood themselves is not simple or static. It has changed over time as it continues to change today and has always been made of multiple interconnected layers of meaning, memory, and experience. I feel very grateful to be doing this work, especially right now. Learning about objects like these opens up the space for a rich, honest, and expansive understanding of Persian Jewish life, past, present, and future. These objects insist on their own complexity, they insist on their own dimension, and they make the past feel much more alive to us. And I'm especially grateful to share them with all of you because this conversation touches the stories of families like yours and like mine. And at the Skirball, they can be points of connection for visitors from other communities, as Jesse said, both Jewish and beyond. بازم خیلی ممنونم و امیدوارم که امروز یک شروع همکاری بیشتری بین مرکز فرهنگی اسکربال و جامعه یهودی ایرانی در لس آنجلس باشه. Thank you all again for coming. Yeah. Hello? Yeah.
We're getting closer. Hello.
Oh, hello.
Hello.
So in a moment, I will introduce our third speaker, but first, how brilliant and fabulous.
Amazing.
It is a privilege to get to work with experts, and that is what Sophie brings to this topic. It's such an honor to be joined in this conversation by Professor Saba Sumek, Dr. Saba Sumek. Dr. Sumek is currently the Director of Teaching and Education at the American Jewish Committee, and it's an incredibly important advocacy role for our nation and communities far beyond. But it follows more than 20 years of scholarship and academic leadership in religious and Mideast studies. And so I want to begin, Saba, if we can, by asking you to share a little bit about what you're working on and what about this is exciting to you, why you've joined us in this effort, how it relates, you feel, to your work.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you all for being here. And thank you to the Nazarian family and the amazing work the Skirball has done. And they have done a lot. There's so much that went behind the scenes here. And just being here and making sure that you feel safe during this time. This made me really emotional. First of all, Sophie, you're amazing. Right? I mean, she really is. And it also gives me a lot of hope because your generation, you were not born there. In a sense, our families, because of trauma, because of we came here with nothing and we had to work. It took, we didn't really sit a lot and listen to our parents and our grandparents talk about Iran because there was so much trauma associated with that history. And it's a luxury to be able to sit and talk about the past when you're trying to just survive and make it. And so to see you know this history, it just gives me hope. And I'm hoping, and we have Professor Pir Nazar at UCLA and other scholars, that everyone takes these courses so they really understand Iranian Jewish history, because if we don't understand it, the next generation will lose it. And this is why this is so important that this is here. The thing that makes me also I love seeing this is my own work focuses on women, and so much of history could be told through the lens of women. The way they were dressed, the male gaze on the women, the subjugation of women, etc. And so to see these stories be told, because women were always put on, oh, this is just, not important, or they're uneducated. They had their children at 12. They got married at 10. They didn't go to high school. They didn't go to college. They don't know anything. But this is what makes them so powerful. And so to see these stories, and I hope, because we all have these really amazing things from our grandmothers, great-grandmothers that are hanging. And as Sharon said, you could bring it here. It will be taken care of. It will be preserved in a really professional way, and you could still have ownership of it. And that way you ensure that for the rest of the generations, Iranian Jews see this, but also very importantly, the non-Jewish community sees this. The Ashkenazi community, and also as you see, all these people who are walking through this door who are not even Jewish, to really solidify our place in this community. I don't even know, totally went off course.
You're perfect. I say the same thing to you that I say to every one of you over and over again. You're perfect. You did it great. You're great. So we have this dream of this first exhibition in 2029, and I want to start asking each of you, what's one thing we better not forget to do? What's one thing? And I think this is a question for each and every one of us. And I can promise you, there are 300 people in this room, and I'm already getting text messages from people who are watching online, and we will fail to do every single thing we have to do, but we have to at least start by hearing all the things, right? Because this is only the beginning. But on our first shot out, what's one thing we have to do?
Well, Saba, I mean, do you want to go ahead or should I? Okay. Well, it's so hard to distill it to just one thing because I'm kind of a generalist. I really think that, or the opposite of a generalist. I mean, I really think that the beauty is in how complicated this whole history is. If there's one thing, I would say, I mean, maybe I hope this answer is clear enough, but it would really be to center that complexity. I think I had spoken about this to both Saba and Jesse earlier, but this is a time, as we all know, where tensions are high. When am I jumping the gun here?
You're perfect.
You're perfect.
Thanks. Where I mean, it's very easy, I think, for stories about Iranian Jews to kind of, both currently and historically, to just like adhere to this very simple or polished narrative about what our identity has meant or looked like over time. I've spoken to a lot of my friends in this room about, how people ask us things like, do you feel more Persian or more Jewish? And how the idea of having a connection or not having a connection to Iran is this very charged thing that people tend to frame as like more black and white. And for me, I think it's just really important to make clear in many ways, but for the effect of any exhibition to show how intertwined all of this is, that this isn't really stuff that you can draw lines through, and how layered it is. And I think that this is actually something I've learned from the older generations in our community, is kind of hearing, because one point I really like to make is that I feel like the 20th century was more transformative, or as transformative in Iran as the rupture of the revolution was in 1979. This was an incredibly transformative century for Iranian Jews, and the ways that shaped the thinking of the older generations of this community is incredible. I've learned so much from them, and I just hope that sort of depth can be reflected. I hope that's a clear answer. And before I pass it off to Saba, I just want to say one last thing, which is that if you have not read her book, I really, really, really recommend that you read Saba's work in general. But I'm indebted to the work of people like you, seriously, and especially your work on the histories of successive generations of Iranian Jewish women. So thank you.
Love.
Yeah, of course, thanks. But anyway, I'll pass it off to you.
So there's so much. Number one, the story of survival. We are a community that truly survived. And we went from the mahallehs, the Jewish ghettos, to living into northern Tehran. And how did that happen? So really learning the story of survival of the community, not romanticizing the history. I think a lot of times we romanticize the history, the Pahlavis, what happened, et cetera, but really looking at it from a historical lens. And another thing is really recognizing that you cannot have Persian history without the Jews, and you cannot have Jewish history without Persia, and how important that is. Another thing, and this might not be popular because I know that we want to keep this apolitical, nonpartisan, et cetera, but I think what's really important to note is, I come from academia, and the past post-October 7th academia has been horrific, as you could imagine. And there has been an attempt by people who are anti-Israel to appropriate the Iranian narrative, Iranian Jewish narrative, the Mizrahi narrative, and to say, we were never Zionists. We never cared about Israel. This was something that, Israel made up in order to get us to move there, et cetera, whatever it is. And so I think it's really important that we also link Iranian history with, I know my family was heavily involved in the Zionist cause and how important that was for Iranian Jews, whether or not they made Aliyah. But I think that's also something that we need to touch upon, especially as our voices and our narrative is being overtaken by people who are weaponizing it. And so I really hope that it's just a very historically accurate understanding of the Persian Jewish community, which I know that you will do, absolutely.
Can I add one more thing?
See, already, it can't just be one thing we have to
Sorry.
do. There's another one.
There's one more thing. I would be remiss if I didn't say this in front of everyone. First of all, thank you, Saba. And also, another thing that I would really love to capture here is the breadth of Jewish life across Iran. That's something that I hope factors into any future exhibition, is not just what Jewish life looked like in Tehran or Hamadan or Esfahan, but what it looked like in Sanandaj, what it looked like in Shiraz, what it looked like in smaller towns across the country. And so if your family, no matter what region of Iran your family originally is from, that breadth is really important, I think, and I feel safe saying the Skirball would love to engage with that. Yeah. So yeah, that's one other thing I wanted to throw in.
Yeah, and I think both of these last 2 points are really in line with what Skirball tries to do, is to make topics that feel foreign or controversial or difficult, to transform them into something accessible and universal by telling the stories at the scale of a human. When you humanize that which has been objectified, you create an opportunity for unexpected learning and connection, right? And I think in both of these cases, you open up more of those moments of possible understanding, and that's exactly what we have to do. I wanted to ask both of you to think about the role of community in our success. Obviously, community is represented here today. And when we think about the role of community in the success of this exhibition and this longer project, I want to think both about the Persian Jewish Los Angeles community and then the larger Skirball Los Angeles community. I think we need both. I'd be curious to hear from each of you what success would look like vis-a-vis community engagement.
I think it's showing up. And look, we're preaching to the choir because you're all here. You literally went through a marathon to get here in 90-degree weather. So we know that you're here and that you're dedicated, but we cannot do this, and the Skirball cannot do this without the community, the Persian Jewish community really participating and really stepping up. I think the Nazarians, thank you so much because you're so amazing. You make us a little lazy because we depend on you to just kind of do everything, but we can't depend on that. We really can't. The objects are only as good as the people who give it to us, to them. I'm sorry, I'm like asking. But the community needs to step up, the community needs to come, the community needs to bring your non-Persian friends coming here. We really need to support this institution because without our support, look, if we're not going to support it, why would anyone else want to support it? And so we need to really have the backing and to ensure that our narrative is being said in a good way, because you cannot come here, if you don't participate and come here and see something up there in a chat and say, I disagree with that, da-da-da-da. Well, if you have been silent this whole time and have not been participating, then there's a reason why it's up there. Come participate, tell us what you know, because this will only be good as the people who are a part of it.
Thank you. Yeah, and so, I mean, I completely agree. I think, again, there really is no future of this initiative without this community, which, I mean, I find really encouraging and exciting because I mean, I always felt close to and was curious about my community, even if I felt like out of step or like a black sheep at certain points. I did always feel this deep, close curiosity, but I mean, this research fellowship has expanded what stories I could ever imagine were kind of couched in people's lives. I mean, I just feel really fortunate to be able to do the kind of work that lets me go around and actually hear what people's individual stories are, what their families' stories are, and it's crazy to me how little these things are discussed, even within our own families, let alone publicly, let alone shared with an institution that has of the caliber and with the reach of the Skirball. And so I know it's there. I mean, there's just so much incredible beauty there to be shared, and yeah, and so I want to just make that clear. And then also, well, I'll jump around. One other thing I was going to say is, as far as reaching out to other communities, so I owe this to my colleagues in the museum department too, who kind of have encouraged me to like kind of come out of my little research hole and where I'm with my books and my computer and come up to the galleries and meet school groups that have been touring and sprinkle in some knowledge about Persian Jewish objects and point out the ones that are on view. And through little occasions like that, I've gotten to meet school children or lots of other visitors who aren't Persian Jews or aren't Jewish at all and come from extremely varied walks of life. And it's been so moving to see how open people are to learning about this history. It's not, you'd think maybe it would be too particular for them, but it's not. They're fascinated that, that there were Jews in Iran who would put a shir khorshid on their personal objects, or similarly in the core we have an Ottoman ketubah that has an Ottoman seal on this private Jewish object. They're interested in, because it sounds really simplistic, but still I think for a lot of populations that aren't Jewish or aren't Middle Eastern, or even sometimes ones that are, people still have this like very artificial schism in their head between anything Jewish and anything Middle Eastern or anything of the Islamic world. So centering this work shows how, I mean, not only does it exist, but it existed and produced culture for millennia, and so, yeah, and I just feel again, I just can't overstate how lucky I feel that, that the Skirball not only is open to this being part of its mission and its programming and exhibitions for the future, but that there's this much care and effort being put into that, and I already think it's bearing fruit, and I can't imagine how well it'll do by 2029. Yeah.
I will tell you something my mother used to say to me, which is, a lady makes her own luck. For me, for what it's worth, Saba had this little Freudian slip. She said, us. That is what success looks like for community engagement. That's it. That's the whole game. That's all we want, is for each and every one of you to feel as connected to the success of this as Sophie and I do. And to feel like when another member of the community raises their hand and says, I have a story to share, I have an idea, oh, I might have something you should come and look at, that you all are benefiting, are receiving their offer. That, for me, is where we are headed. We quote frequently the hip-hop star LL Cool J, who used to have a brand called FUBU, for us, by us. This has to be an exhibition that is by Persian Jewish Los Angeles, at least as much as it is for Persian Jewish Los Angeles. That is what success looks like. That is where I hope we are headed. Thank you. I want to end really where I began, just with a final question to each of you. This has been an unimaginable time in global events, and I don't know what's going to happen next, and I know that nobody else does. We are all so eager to see a path forward to peace and safety. Given how you are experiencing this time, given everything you know about the history that you study, can you just tell me a little bit about this project and how it relates to how you're experiencing these events? You see the headlines, you worry for your family. What changes about this? What do you feel about this? You see these objects. How does it help you? How does it change the way you see these events? Like, what meaning comes from knowing what you know about this history as you look at this current?
Okay, yeah. Well, I mean, I feel like I'm on the same wavelength as everyone in this room in saying that we're all really trying to be optimistic about what could happen geopolitically going forward. But war is terrible, and I think that having this background and trying to understand this history and the work I've done over the past year and change it's sort of, it's not even as simple as the fact that it's like deepened my connection to Iran or anything that simple. It's just kind of like really oriented me, I feel like, in understanding where the whole genesis of my family and their story in a way that I think is pretty incredible, considering I've never been to Iran. I can't go, and at least not under these circumstances. And yeah, and I think one thing I'll say is last night I was actually talking to my mom about really similar questions around all of this, like why the museum work around Iranian Jews and cultural institutions engaging with Iranian Jewish history feels valuable right now, is that because there's so much uncertainty ahead, it's not guaranteed really how much is even going to be preserved within Iran. Also just even beyond war, think over time people lose track of the objects that they've kept in their family, and so especially because we're on the cusp of potential dramatic change, especially because we're in the headlines right now, the preservation of these objects is, I think, particularly important, because there is no understanding, or there is no sort of like reformulation of the way people understand their relationship to Iran as Iranians or not, or their relationship to their family memories, without objects to sort of root that in. That's what these things do, is they make these stories real. They put them in front of people. Like I said, they make these things feel alive. So, yeah. And the last thing I'll say is just, I remember when I was a kid, what, I would hear Iran talked about, and I didn't really understand what this place was, that my whole family was from there, but I couldn't see it, and I couldn't feel it, and it took a long time for that to sort of come into view. And my hope is that however, someone like me would want for that to happen for them, that they could have the resources in front of them, especially locally, physically, institutionally, to reform that relationship too on their own terms. So that's something I find really important about this work. Yeah.
And I'll keep this quick because I know we're running out of time, but the Iranian Jews were the oldest Jews in the diaspora, 2,700 years. And we were there before the advent of Islam. It's a major part of Persian history. It's a major part of Jewish history. And so this is so important, because whether or not people are interested in us right now because of what's going on in the news and exoticizing the Persian Jewish community, I don't care. It's because you're interested, and I don't care if it's done in an exotic male gaze type of way. I have never had so many reporters and journalists and podcast people reach out to know this story, and this is what's really, really important. And as Sophie said, this solidifies us in a way that they could truly understand, because you could always read something, but when you see the object, it just has a different emotional effect. Also, I think just what's really important, and again, I want to say nonpartisan, apolitical, et cetera, but it's important that people in the West understand Iranian history and what has happened, especially because history repeats itself, and people don't realize that the reason why the revolution happened was because, not only because of the religious people, but the socialists, the feminists, the secular Iranians who made that alliance, the red-green alliance, and we're seeing that happen today. And it's an important thing for people to realize when you're making that alliance, because all those people that supported that revolution have ended up killed in Ivan prison, and their grandchildren and great-grandchildren are still suffering from it. And I think it's important for people in the West to truly understand this history. And I hope that this will help, teach that.
Thank you. We're going to wrap up here in one moment, and there is more goodness waiting for you. But before we do, I'll take the privilege of my position and just observe a couple of things I heard. If we don't understand our history, the next generation will lose it. We have to embrace complexity, even in the story of survival. You cannot have Persian history without Jews, and you cannot have Jewish history without Persia. You are us. There is so much more to come. I am given just so much hope and joy from the work that you're doing and the conversation that you're starting. And to that point, the conversation continues. So we're going to proceed into the courtyard. There's lots of time for conversation with Dr. Sumek, with Sophie, with other members of the Skirball and Nazarian families. Sophie is going to be in the conference center with a collection of objects available for brief, close looking. Something I've learned working in a museum is that you actually cannot see with the same neural processing from the screen what you can see in person. And when it comes to an object, there are experiences you cannot get if you aren't in physical proximity with the object. So we have a couple for you to look at. But before we go, we hope that everyone will take with them copies of these pamphlets. And Sophie, if I could ask you to walk, I can take one, and it's very difficult to hold a microphone and two pamphlets.
Thank you, yeah.
But we have examples in English and in Farsi. And this is a guide for members of community to think about how to preserve objects in their lives for future storytelling. Do you want to explain? Is there anything in here?
No, I mean, I think that covers it. You'll see it sort of will tell you a bit more about this initiative. And inside, really the most important part tells you some practical tips, one by one, for how to care for objects of different materials, whether they're photographs or paper, metal, It's just kind of like a hands-on guide to make sure that your family's objects, no matter what material they're made of, are taken care of. And again, as Jesse said, they're available in 2 languages, and we'd really hope you enjoy them. Yeah.
So we will follow up with email with copies of this digitally, but please take as many as you wish physically today. We will follow up with the link to the video if you wish to share it with others. But for now, my friends, we are launched. Congratulations and thank you. Thank you so much. I want to we have members of my board of directors here. We have the Nazarian family here. A special thanks to Dr. Sumek and Sophie Levy. Please enjoy.